All right, let's talk about one of the most financially significant and, frankly, misunderstood risks in the insurance industry today: U.S. flood. We're going to dig into why the old ways of looking at this peril are falling short and what it really takes to see the whole picture. So, I'll just start with a direct question for you. Is your current flood model really giving you the full story? Or could it be leaving some pretty costly, maybe even catastrophic blind spots in your book of business? The truth is, how we understand this peril is going through a massive shift. And this is the absolute key. Thinking of flood as just one single thing, well, that's a fundamental mistake. It's so much more complex. U.S. flood is a dynamic chain reaction. It's a series of interconnected events where one type of flooding can kick off or even amplify another, creating this cascade of risk that, let's be honest, a lot of models just weren't built for. To really get this, we've got to start with the basics, the fundamental physics of how water actually moves across the real world. It's not some simple uniform thread. It's a combination of really powerful interacting forces. So, when we talk about flood, we're really talking about a few different things. You've got pluvial flooding, that's your intense, sudden downpour that just overwhelms the storm drains in a city. Then you've got fluvial flooding, which is what happens when rivers and streams spill over their banks. And of course, along the coasts, you have storm surge driven by hurricanes. But the real danger, the thing that catches everyone by surprise, is the compound event, where these forces smash together and make everything worse. Just picture it. A hurricane is pushing a massive storm surge inland. Well, that surge acts like a giant plug in the system. It stops all the torrential rain from that same storm from draining out. So the rivers start to swell, but the water has nowhere to go. The result isn't a simple 1 + 1 = 2 situation. It's a nonlinear explosion of damage that simplistic models just cannot see coming. Okay, so if the old way is broken, what does a modern, realistic modeling approach actually require? Let's take a look at what goes into this new way of thinking. A true next-generation model has to be built on an incredible foundation of detail. We're talking about super fine-scale elevation data, so you can see how water might flow around a single building, not just a whole zip code. It has to be physics-guided, meaning it actually simulates how water behaves based on real-world hydrology, not just looking at what happened in the past. And this is so critical. It has to integrate both inland flood and storm surge together in one single consistent view for the entire country. No more stitching together different regional models that don't talk to each other. And to really understand the full range of what's possible, especially those rare, truly catastrophic events that can make or break a carrier's year, you need a massive library of scenarios. A modern approach simulates tens of thousands of years of plausible weather. In this case, 50,000 years, just to capture that tail risk that the historical record alone is always going to miss. Yeah, this quote really nails it. Getting to this level of detail and scientific rigor isn't easy. It requires a huge investment in science and some serious computing power. It's really the only way to go from just guessing about catastrophic risk to actually quantifying it with real confidence. Okay, so the science is impressive, no doubt. But what does it actually mean for the business? Let's connect all this powerful modeling capability directly to the financial pressures and decisions you have to make every single day. Let's just ground this in reality for a second. In only the first 9 months of 2023, the U.S. P&C industry saw a net underwriting loss of $32.2 billion. A huge piece of that is being driven by Nat Cats, where having a flawed view of risk leads directly to financial pain. It's simple. When you can't see the risk clearly, you can't price it, you can't manage it, and you certainly can't grow profitably. And here's a major headache that comes from using a model you don't fully trust. Underwriters are forced to add something called uncertainty loading. You can think of it like a fog tax. Because the model's view of the risk is hazy, you have to pad the price just to cover what you don't know. And that makes your pricing less competitive, it kills confidence, and it's just not an efficient way to use your capital. But when you have a much more accurate, high-resolution view of the risk, the whole game changes. Down at the property level, you can underwrite with incredible precision. At the portfolio level, you can manage your accumulations and confidently find pockets of profitable growth. And then at the enterprise level, you get a defensible, transparent view of risk for managing capital and for reporting to regulators and rating agencies. So let's put these two ways of thinking right next to each other. It's really time to challenge those legacy views and embrace what's become the new standard for understanding this peril. This slide really lays out the stark difference. On one side, you have the legacy approach. It often relies on simplified physics, uses a patchwork of different regional models, and completely ignores those critical compound events we talked about. It uses coarse data and limited scenarios, which leaves you with huge blind spots. But on the other side, the next generation approach turns every single one of those weaknesses into a strength. Physics-guided hydrology, one consistent nationwide view, integrated peril interactions, and a massive set of scenarios to capture the full range of possibilities. So it really forces you to ask a pretty tough question. Are your decisions built on a foundation of statistical shortcuts and old assumptions, or are you basing them on a model that reflects the physical reality of how water actually moves and causes damage in the real world? And this brings us to our final and maybe the most important point of all. Getting this stuff right is not a simple task. It takes a really deep and focused commitment. So the key takeaway here is that U.S. flood modeling is simply not a commodity. You can't just pick one off the shelf. The kind of complexity we've been talking about demands dedicated specialists, teams that live and breathe hydrology, high-performance computing, and transparent, defensible science. It requires a laser focus on this one incredibly complex peril. You know, in a world with increasing climate volatility and more regulatory scrutiny, this expertise, it's not optional. It's the absolute foundation for making defensible decisions. It's what gives you the confidence to price your risk right, deploy your capital effectively, and build a resilient and profitable business for the long haul. So I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. Flood is a dynamic, interconnected, and constantly changing peril. The only way you can possibly manage it effectively is with a view of risk that is every single bit as dynamic.